You as well as our fellow members that Senate Rule 22 essentially says that when a bill is received at the Secretary's desk, a bill shall, under the proper order of business, be numbered, read, printed, and referred by the Committee on Rules to the Standing Committee. The Committee on Rules shall check all Assembly measures before reference to committee and shall designate the committee to which they shall refer. So my question, Madam President, this afternoon is, how did these bills get here?
Senator Cox, the response is that these bills were referred to us under Senate Rule 24, which is referred by the Senate Rules Committee during the extraordinary special session.
Madam President, I appreciate the explanation, but let me call to your attention Senate Rule 28, which does in fact provide for a written notice to rules. It does in fact say, by the way, Madam President, it says Rule 28, a bill or resolution may not be withdrawn from committee except on written notice being first given to the Committee on Rules and by a 21 vote of the Senate. And so, Madam President, the question is, was there in fact notice given, and was there a vote of 21 by the Senate?
Senator Cox, the custom and practice of the House has been to enable the chair of the Senate Rules Committee to be able to withdraw it and to bring it to the floor, and we are operating today as we have tended to operate in this chamber with the custom and practice of that policy, and that's what brings us to be able to take this up today.
Madam President, but the Rule 22 says, in fact, that a bill shall, in fact, be referred to a committee. Rule 28 says there must be a written notice.
And Senator Cox, we have Rule 24, and that's what brings us to this floor today. It's under Rule 24. Senator Duchesne, for what purpose do you rise?
Can I ask, Madam President, and I don't know, I was going to ask that all these bills be referred to the Budget Committee. Would that simplify the discussion, because we were planning to hear them in subcommittee today?
Madam President.
With their proposed amendments so they could be heard in committee.
Madam President.
Well, one moment. That's what we are intending to do, Senator Duchesne. Senator Cox.
Madam President, if these bills are going to be heard by the Budget Committee, will this body have the opportunity to have witnesses from the Department of Finance, from the Legislative Counsel's office, and any other witnesses that we need that are deemed necessary to determine what the cost of these particular programs are?
Let me turn to Senator Duchesne, Chair of the Budget Committee, to respond.
It was our intention that the public hearing would be held informationally in the subcommittee, Mr. Cox, and then the subcommittee hopefully would refer the bills back to the full Budget Committee to be heard on the floor. But the public hearing and testimony part, to which any member, even not members of the sub, is welcome to attend, watch, however they wish, it would be a public hearing, and all of them would be able to testify at the public hearing that we're trying to start as soon as we get through this part and we can refer the bill.
Madam President, is it my understanding that the subcommittees will in fact be heard under the auspices of the 7th Extraordinary Committee?
Yes, Senator Cox, because we'll be meeting at that time. And Senator,
all right. May I just continue for half a second, Madam President? Don't mean to try your patience, but I would like to call to your attention that there is no subcommittee designation in this 7th Extraordinary Committee. There's no provision for a subcommittee. There's a provision for a committee here in the regular session, but when Mr. Steinberg, in fact, if you will get the Senate Daily Journal and turn to page 3 with me, you will see that Mr. Steinberg did not ask for any special budget committee. Mr. Steinberg said Mr. Steinberg asked for and was granted unanimous consent that the Officers Committee on Rules, the standing committees, and the standing rules of 2009 be deemed to be the same as for the 2009-2010 7 extraordinary session. But there is no provision here for a subcommittee on budgets.
Senator Duchesne.
Madam President, it's my understanding of the rules of the House that it is the prerogative of the chair of the committee to appoint subcommittees, and if that was not done in the original resolution, I would be happy to appoint Mr. Simitian, Mr. Lowenthal, and Mr. Benoit to Subcommittee 2 in order that the bond bill, as proposed to be amended, could be heard.
Madam President.
One moment. Senator Simitian, your point of order.
Madam President, it's my understanding that there are 4 Senate policy bills and 1 bond bill which the Senate will be asked to refer to the full Budget Committee, that the chair of the full Budget Committee has asked the Budget Subcommittee to hear the bond and only the bond on a purely informational basis to allow for an abundance of public scrutiny. That being the case, all 4 policy bills as well as the bond measure would remain within the jurisdiction of the Budget Committee as a whole, and upon the conclusion of an information hearing on the bond measure only, we could reconvene as a Budget Committee of the whole and take up all 4 policy bills as well as the bond measure, which would still be within the purview of the Budget Committee as a whole. That is my point of order, Madam President. I believe that is an accurate reflection of the appropriate process consistent with the rules of this House.
You are correct. Okay, Senator Cox, one last comment, please.
There may very well be more comments, Madam President, but let me just call to the gentleman's attention that there is no provision in the 7th extraordinary session for a subcommittee on the budget. It wasn't asked for. It's not there. You can't create it out of thin air. And as long as the gentleman continues to talk about that, you just simply can't do that. Let me tell you again what Rule 22 says. It says you must, in fact, refer a bill to a policy committee, and there is no policy committee being heard. The policy committees are not, in fact, hearing any of these bills.
Senator Duchesne.
It's my understanding, Madam President, all of these bills were heard in Policy Committee last week.
Madam President, that the senator is incorrect. They in fact were heard in an informational hearing. There was no questions asked. There was no provision for any.
They had multiple hours of public testimony, Senator Cox.
One moment, members. The decision is that a chair may appoint members to a subcommittee. If we need to have ratification by the Rules Committee, so be it. But that has basically been the custom and practice in the order of the House. Senator Duchesne has acknowledged the members of the subcommittee. Senator Duchesne, would you wish to repeat those, please?
I would appoint Mr. Simitian, Mr. Lowenthal, and Mr. Benoit.
These can be subject to ratification of the Rules Committees. If there is such a request, we can have Rules Committee meet. But that is the order. Senator Cox, and then we're going to move forward.
Simply ask that all of these measures be voted on one item at a time. You have got whatever bills you're going to hear in that subcommittee, vote on them by this body one item at a time.
Senator Duchesne, these bills are going to be referred to the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. Do you wish to meet at this time? Senator Simitian?
Parliamentary inquiry.
Please proceed.
Madam President, it's my understanding that all 5 measures, the 4 policy bills and the bond bill, would all be referred to the full Budget Committee, that assuming that action took place, the full Budget Committee would have possession of all 5 measures, that only one of those measures will go to the subcommittee, and that is for the limited purpose of an informational hearing, and that upon completion of that informational hearing, we will reconvene as a Budget Committee of the whole on this floor with all 5 measures still within the purview of the full Budget Committee. Do I have the facts straight, Madam President?
That is correct.
Thank you again.
That is correct. Senator Cox?
Is there a subcommittee hearing held when there's no provision in the daily file for a subcommittee? It has not been created in the 7th extraordinary session. It's not there.
Yes, Senator Cox, the subcommittee and its membership have been named. Senator Ducheney, do you wish now to call the meeting of the Budget Committee?
Yes.
Okay, where will you be meeting? Which room?
The subcommittee is in 4203, I believe. The subcommittee will meet in 4203 in order to accommodate any public testimony that people would like to bring to the discussion on the bond bill. The others will be in committee, and when we return from sub, we'll adopt the amendments. Right?
All right, members of the Budget Committee, please go to the reported room. And pursuant to Rule 25. Okay. So members, pursuant to Joint Rule 10.5, these measures have been referred to the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. Members of the committee, please report to, what's the room 4203. Okay, members, we will recess until 5 p.m. in order to allow the Budget Committee to do its work. 5 p.m. we will reconvene.